I bought the mirror because the shopkeeper told me not to. He had one of those faces that never quite commits to a feature. Soft, pale, always damp with a sheen, as if his skin never learned where to settle. "It's not for everyone," he said, and the sentence dangled between us like a fly on a filament. He didn't look at the mirror when he said it. He watched me, as if my curiosity was the real artifact under glass. The mirror stood taller than me, wrapped in a black walnut frame whose corners were hand-carved into a spiral motif that seemed to bend inward instead of out. Glass that old is never truly flat. The surface can look like water if you tilt your head.
I tilted mine.
The ceiling lamps in the antique shop stretched and warped across it in slow ripples. The glass was darker, too. Smoke tint, they call it. So the reflection felt a few shades further toward evening than the rest of the room. "How much?" I asked. He didn't name a price. He said, "Do you live alone?" And when I hesitated, he smiled around the question as if I'd confirmed something for him. I ask because large mirrors, they collect more than light. Sometimes they keep it. "I live alone," I said. Not sure why I told the truth. He nodded as if pleased with himself and finally told me the number. It was absurdly cheap. I paid in cash and he refused to help me carry it to the car. "You can manage," he said. "You have a steady grip." I don't remember telling him I edit videos for a living. But he said it like a man who'd watched my hands do their work. It fit on the landing at the top of the stairs, where the hallway to my bedroom chokes down to a narrower throat. The wall there had always been empty, and it bothered me. The house is old enough to groan when it changes its mind, and the floors don't apologize for their memories. A mirror seemed like a reasonable thing to ask of that wall, like a question without a right answer. When I propped it up and peeled away the protective cloth, I caught my reflection. Late evening in my face and shoulders, black hoodie, hair tied back because I always forget it's there until I catch it in a cabinet hinge. I raised my hand. So did the reflection. Of course it did. But something about the timing felt wrong. Not delayed, exactly. Thick, like sound moving through water. "Okay," I said. "You're dramatic." The house said nothing. Neither did the mirror. My reflection looked like someone who had just moved into a new angle of themselves. I was filming almost everything then, as a way of keeping a record for the channel. Long-form horror demands authenticity even when it lies, and I wanted my workspace and my process for the behind-the-scenes. B-roll of my desk, time-lapses of color correction, a static shot of the landing where I'd hung Edison bulbs in a quarter spiral because it looked like a galaxy from the right angle. The mirror made an interesting background. It swallowed light in a way the camera adored. That first night, I set a tripod at the end of the hall with the mirror centered in frame. If the footage turned into nothing, I'd cut it into a cold open. If the mirror did something weird, if it warped or shimmered or developed weather inside itself, I'd have more than content. I'd have a story. I didn't announce it. I didn't do a "hey guys." I just pressed record, checked focus. My face crisp in the screen, the mirror's darkness eating at the edges, and left it running while I went downstairs to make dinner at 7 minutes and 41 seconds on the first night's clip. The landing lights flickered, and for a single frame the mirror reflected an extra bulb that didn't exist in the hall. A ghost bulb, identical to the others, positioned slightly lower than the rest where a 7th socket might be if I'd installed one. On the next frame, the extra light was gone, and the remaining 6 glowed as if nothing had happened. When I watched it back at my desk, I rewound 3 times, pausing on the frame like I could bruise it, then stepping forward and back a few frames at a time. No artifacts in the codec. No digital dropout. The extra bulb had been there. It had thrown a little glimmer across the edge of the mirror's frame. And yet the wall showed no sign of it. I told myself it was lens flare. Then I told myself it was nothing. Then I told myself it was a good omen. The kind of glitch that attracts the right audience. I slept poorly and dreamt I was brushing my teeth with my left hand, which isn't my hand for that task. In the dream, the mirror in the bathroom had been covered with a towel. I knew what was under it without lifting the towel, and I woke up with the taste of copper behind my teeth and a certainty that I had not, in fact, brushed at all. The mirror grows when the room grows dark. I know how that sounds, but it's true. Not physically bigger, deeper. On the second night, the glass looked a few inches further away than it had during daylight. You could fit more hallway inside it. The spiral carvings at the corners seemed more pronounced, and if I stared long enough, they looked like small hands cupped toward the glass. The wood grain a whirl of fingerprints. I set the tripod again, centered the frame, pressed record, and this time stayed upstairs. I brought my laptop to the landing and sat against the opposite wall as the camera watched us both watch the mirror. The house creaked, settling into colder air. Somewhere, a branch scraped the window in single syllables. KSK, K. My skin prickled with the sensation of an audience at 12 minutes and 13 seconds. My phone chimed with an email I didn't want to answer, and I rolled my eyes at my own name like it was someone else's fault at 12 minutes and 16 seconds. The mirror rolled its eyes first. I didn't see it then. I was looking down. But in the edit, where I punched in for clarity and tracked my face, the movement happened a fraction of a second before mine. It was subtle, half an eyelid's worth of attitude. But it was early. That's the important part. It anticipated me, or my reaction slipped behind its. I watched that loop until the groove of it felt like a rut. The rational brain can accommodate a remarkable amount of terror if it's given enough frames to stack. I told myself microsecond differences happen, that the camera sensor reads left to right and introduces skew that looks like time. I wrote myself a note to call a friend who shoots weddings and ask about rolling shutter in low light. Then I closed the laptop and sat in front of the mirror with my knees up like a child. "I'm not scared of you," I said. My voice didn't sound like me. It sounded like someone had borrowed my throat and was trying it on. The mirror's glass did not ripple or fog. My reflection regarded me in kind. But in that breath between sentences, when your mouth is still open from the last word and your lungs decide whether to wait or take another, my reflection's shoulders lowered, like it had exhaled first. The house, the hallway, the camera, all of them very still. That I lifted my hand, so did my reflection. That I lowered mine, so did my reflection. That I waited, holding my breath until my ears filled with cotton. I let my hand hang between positions like a question tearing itself. The reflection matched me. My arm shook from holding it, and tiny tremors multiplied in the glass. My skin a nest of pale worms in the dark. My fingers tingled and went numb, and I dropped the arm and laughed because the alternative was to cry. And then, impossible to miss, plain as a slap, the reflection's hand stayed up and gave the smallest wave. 3 fingers. A child's wave. Not goodbye. Not hello. Something less linguistically honest. Some old gesture people used when they were trying to find out if you were human enough to answer back. I scrambled for the camera and checked the screen. I was still recording. I watched the last 30 seconds on the tiny display, my face pale, my hand lifted, my arm trembling, and then the reflection's fingers, a fraction early and then, unmistakably independent, waggled like they knew me. I stopped the recording. I wanted, I'm not sure what, to stop the moment, to trap it. I slept with the hall light on and my bedroom door shut like someone who doesn't mind looking ridiculous if it buys an inch of quiet. On the third night, the mirror's surface looked like the top of a lake under cloud. I could not have said what color the glass was, except deeper. The spirals at the corners seemed rotated a degree, as if they had listened so hard they'd moved. I set the camera again, and this time I added a second body. A cheap action cam on the floor at the mirror's base, pointing up. "Okay," I told the empty house. "If you've got choreography, I'm ready." I said it like a joke, but the moment the words left me, the air thinned. The house, which is mostly old wood and old air stitched together, drew a breath that I didn't hear so much as feel in my eyelids and gums. My scalp prickled. The mirror went a shade darker, as if the hallway bulb had dimmed. It hadn't. I checked. On the footage, the mirror's histogram dipped as if its light had been turned down separately from the rest of the room. 6 minutes and 2 seconds. I snapped my fingers. Loud. Close to the glass. Stupid. It made the sound you'd expect in a tunnel. Too sharp, too lonely. My reflection snapped half a beat later and flinched, as if my noise surprised it. There's a difference between watching yourself and watching somebody wear your face. My reflection wore me like a garment that didn't quite fit in the shoulders. At 6 minutes and 19 seconds. To test the obvious, I looked away, deliberately and dramatically. I turned my head to the right, facing the framed prints on the wall. In the periphery of the glass, my reflection turned left. Then, when my eyes were off the mirror, its head flicked back toward me. It did so as if to catch me, to see if I'd noticed. When I turned my gaze back toward the glass, my reflection was obediently facing right again. When I looked away, it looked at me. A game of chicken with a darker version of my face. I repeated this. Right, left, down, look away, look back. Every time my eyes left the mirror, the reflection hunted my gaze like a cat follows a clock's pendulum. Every time my eyes returned, it snapped into place. Okay, I said, throat too dry, voice smaller. Okay. The sound recorder on the floor next to the action cam picked up a faint tapping from inside the frame. Not knuckles, nails, not mine. I didn't run. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd already decided the camera was a witness whose testimony would anchor me to something rational later. Maybe because flight from mirrors is funny in the wrong ways. I put my palm to the glass, and my reflection's hand met mine. The temperature was wrong. The glass felt warm. Not room warm, body warm, like someone had pressed their own palm against the other side seconds before mine. The warmth moved under my skin as if it was a living thing that wanted to be mine. Stop, I said to it, to myself. Stop. The warmth faded. My reflection's mouth crumpled in a way mine did not. A sympathetic frown. A child who'd been scolded. It looked like it wanted to say something. Its lips shaped sorry, but there was no sound. That could have been grief. Could have been inside my head. It could have been nothing. I pulled my hand away and my palm print stayed on the glass for too long. Like the mirror was reluctant to let the heat go. At 9 minutes and 40 seconds. When I bent to stop the floor camera, the action cam caught what the main camera could not. While my head was turned and my face was out of frame, the reflection's eyes followed me down. It watched me, smiled. Then its hand lifted and gave the same small 3-finger wave, but slower now, like a promise that I didn't see that wave until later. I didn't know what I'd been promised. The 4th day I didn't film. I told myself I was giving it less attention. Mirrors are like cats in that way. If you press your affection, they aim their pointy ends at you. I threw a blanket over the frame like you do with bird cages and slept late and ate poorly and avoided the landing. When the house creaked and groaned, I told it that's what old houses do, and when water ticked in the pipes, I told it yes, pipes tick. By afternoon, the blanket silhouette had begun to irritate me. I don't mean the blanket moved. I mean, I did not like being the person in my own house who had thrown a blanket over a problem and pretended it wasn't in the room. The hour grew thin in that way late afternoons do, and I wanted to puncture it. I made coffee too strong and took the blanket off. The mirror looked as if I had woken it up. Not angry, startled. It's an absurd thing to think about an object. But the landing felt occupied in a way I'd never felt before. Like sunlight touching someone else's skin. The spirals at the corners seemed to have unwound another degree. In the wood grain, there was a whirl like an open eye. Okay, I said. One rule. No more waving. I don't know why I said it. I think it was a weak person's attempt at a boundary. I set up both cameras and turned on my screen recorder. 2. If you've never filmed your own apartment from multiple angles at once, you learn an ugly geography of yourself. Where you tend to stand, where you tend to return, the spot in the kitchen where you turn in a small circle because you forgot why you went there. I walked that circle twice and ended up at the landing, palms warm with caffeine. "I'm going to look away," I said. "And you are going to stay put." I turned. The mirror breathed, not a sound, a feeling, and I had the absolute conviction of being studied. Not seen, studied. Like a word in a different alphabet. I turned back fast. My reflection was exactly where it should be. Its eyes were not. They were pointed slightly higher. Not much. Enough to register. Enough to make me feel as if I'd walked into a room where someone had been talking about me and decided to pretend they hadn't. I raised my hand slowly. It raised its hand a fraction faster.
I lowered mine.
It lowered faster than mine, like it was pleased to lead. I kept my hand at waist height and waited. My reflection held its breath with me. We made a small altar out of caution. My nose itched. I refused to scratch it. The itch transitioned from physical to metaphysical and became an idea that I could break this if I wanted, that the mirror's rules were nothing, that I could lean forward and kiss the glass as if daring myself to be that brave. The thought felt like an implant. It felt placed. But it was mine too, because it looked like me when I thought it. I laughed at nothing because you have to put noise somewhere. The noise chose its own shape. A tap came from the other side of the glass. Fingernail. Then another, lower, like knuckle on wood. Then the slow, deliberate slide of a palm traveling up the far side of the glass, paired perfectly with the print of an invisible hand, fogging as it went. "Nope," I said, because the heart has only a few words when it tries to make rules for the abyss. "Nope." I backed away and the mirror did two impossible things. The reflection didn't match my movement, and the glass gave the impression of depth where the wall behind it should have been flat. The hallway inside the mirror continued at a slightly different angle, a subtle wedge into elsewhere. The light in there had a colder cast, like moonlight filtered through water. My reflection smiled. A shy, stricken expression, like it had been taught to smile by someone who had never seen a real one. And then it lifted its hand and pointed behind me. I turned because I am easy and human, and reflexes faster than fear. The landing was empty. The house held its breath. When I turned back, my reflection had not returned to matching me. It was closer to the glass, as if it had leaned forward to see what I'd look like when I turned back around. It lifted its palm and pressed it to the inside of the glass. The warmth came through as if the glass had no business pretending to be a barrier. I didn't run. I don't have a good reason. The action cam caught what I missed. As I stood there, my reflection whispered something my mouth did not shape. No sound, but breath fog flared and collapsed on the other side. I don't lip read, but I didn't have to. It formed the words like prayer. "Let me out. You think about the rules other people used to live by, the superstitions that kept them whole in a world that did not love them. Don't whistle at night. Don't call your name into a well. Don't eat the food offered in a dream. Don't stand in front of a mirror in the dark and ask who's there." I'm not sure my grandmother ever said any of those things, but her silence about fear taught me enough. I learned it anyway as I stood there. If the thing in the mirror asks you for permission, never give it a sentence that can't be unsaid. So I didn't answer it. I did what a person does when they don't trust their mouth. I went for tape. I in the kitchen drawer, the one with rubber bands and dying batteries and pens that only write if you curse them. I found blue painter's tape and a utility blade with a retractable tooth. I came back to the landing like a mechanic about to fix a small machine gone wrong. "I'm not letting you out," I said, which is a sentence constructed from the same words as "let me out." I heard the mistake as I made it. The mirror heard it too. My reflection's mouth softened in recognition, as if compliments were being exchanged. A courtesy before a fight. I put tape across the glass in long diagonals, the way you tape windows before a hurricane. I did it without thinking, a behavior borrowed from a future I don't want. The tape cast pale X's across my reflection's face, cutting the features into manageable shapes. The spiral carvings at the corners looked more like hands now. The wood was warm. The glass hummed under the blade when I trimmed the edges. "You're contained," I said, thinking that if I named the boundary, it might be real.my. Reflection nodded that I hadn't nodded. Then it did the worst thing it could have done. It turned its back to me. It faced the deeper hallway inside the glass. Not my hallway, not the same angle of it, and looked down the impossible continuation, where the light was colder and the edges were soft and something like fog moved at floor level in lazy weather. Tilted its head in listening. Its shoulders rose like a breath was being held. Then it lifted its hand and beckoned to something I could not see. It wasn't asking me to let it out. It was inviting something in. I put my hand to the glass, tape scratching my knuckles, and the warmth felt deserved. My mouth said a string of words that were not sentences. The mirror didn't ripple. It deepened another degree. The hallway inside it flexed, a single long inhale. Then, quiet as a mouse turning inside a wall, the reflection leaned its face toward the glass, placed its lips where mine would be if I were brave, and whispered 3 syllables that fogged and cleared in 3 shining ovals. On the footage, when I slowed it down and annotated each frame like the film of a meteor, you can see the shape of each sound. 3. More. Nights. I slept with the mirror covered again, which felt like flossing your teeth after you've already eaten glass. I set an alarm for midnight because I didn't want to sleep through whatever countdown had been started, and because I was afraid of dreaming something I could not recall in witnessable detail. Midnight came and made no case for itself. The house did its night house things. Thermal ticks, breath in the vents, the electric hum of my own machinery. On the first of the 3 nights, the mirror stayed behind the blanket. It did not move. It did not tremble. The camera watched a rectangle of cloth and the cloth watched nothing. I made tea I didn't drink and walked the kitchen in a small oval until I taught it a path. At 2 hours 31 minutes and 4 seconds on the hallway camera, the blanket lifted on one side as if breath had gathered under it and chosen a corner to escape. It settled again with the simple gravity of cloth. I told myself I had not seen what I'd seen on the second night. The house woke me at 3:12 with a sound like a fingernail drawn slowly down a ribbed surface. I stood with my forehead against the bedroom door and listened like a child too old to call for anyone. The sound came again, lower, not a nail, the edge of something wood, a corner dragged along a wall. The landing camera recorded nothing but a trembling in the blanket along the bottom edge, as if a draft had insisted on being noticed, and then, a detail I only saw on the 10th viewing. A faint hand-shaped indentation pressed outward from the blanket and then withdrew. On the 3rd night, I did not cover the mirror. At midnight, the hallway lights dimmed the way power sometimes dips in an old neighborhood. The footage shows the bulbs at 70% for a full minute. Then they fought their way back to full bright with the exhausted fortitude of a body finishing a race. The mirror did not track with the rest of the exposure. It was darker, deeper. It had learned the shape of the hallway and now owned its own brightness. I sat cross-legged in front of it, both cameras rolling, the sound recorder hungry for the faintest breath. My reflection sat the same way. For the first time since I'd brought the mirror home, there was no lag, no lead. It matched me exactly. If I leaned an inch, it leaned. If I blinked, it blinked. If I drew a breath, it took one the same size. "I'm here," I said.
I'm listening.
My reflection nodded once, gravely, and then lifted its hands and pressed them to the inside of the glass. The warmth of them reached me. It made the hair on my arms move. It mouthed something I could not read, not even in post. Then, with the smallest, sweetest shift of expression, almost affectionate, it lifted its right hand and, without breaking eye contact, gave a single slow wave. The tape X's creaked as the glass bowed in the center. Not much. Enough. The spiral carvings at the corners seemed to tighten. Inside the mirror, down the deeper hallway, A shape moved along the floor like a spill of shadow learning how to stand. It formed knees. It decided on shoulders, pressed a hand to the ground and tested gravity. The action cam's audio track picked up a faint sigh. Not in the room, not through air, through wood. The sound a house makes when something new enters its memory. "I don't want this," I said. The honesty of it surprised me. It surprised the reflection, too. It flinched in a way that looked like grief. Our faces were close enough on the glass that my breath fogged its cheek. "Please," I said. "Please don't." My reflection's lips shaped "trust me," and then it did something new. It looked away first. It glanced down and to the left toward the action cam. Then it looked back at me and nodded once, as if agreeing to a plan we had not spoken. It leaned forward until only its eyes were visible in the frame. Then it opened its mouth and exhaled. The glass fogged from the inside in a bloom that formed words. "Turn around at 4. "What happens at 4? I said, but the fog was already gone, the warmth evaporating into nothing on the clip. My phone display lights up with the time. 03:59. I did not want to turn around. I understood the ritual shape of the moment too well. But I had obeyed the mirror in so many small ways already, where to stand, when to watch, which boundaries to call boundaries, that any disobedience suddenly felt like blasphemy that would anger the wrong God. 4 hours and 1 second. I turned. The hallway behind me was the hallway I knew. 6 bulbs, the framed prints, the banister that had claimed my shins too many times. But the prints were different by a degree that mattered only because I knew what lived in those frames. In the second print, the sky had a smear of gray that wasn't mine. In the fourth, a figure stood on a street that had been empty a day earlier. The banister's top post had a hairline crack that had not existed yesterday. The house was the house, but at a slant. The world had slid 1 inch to the left. I turned back to the mirror to confirm that the reflection of those details matched the wrongness. My reflection was not there. The hallway inside the mirror showed me the back of a figure walking away from glass into deeper light. It moved like me and was dressed like me, kept its head turned just enough that I could not see its cheek. It passed the camera's edge and disappeared into the continuation of the hall that wasn't my hall. The tape X's on the glass were cut from the other side and curled outward in papery petals. The spiral carvings at the corners no longer looked like hands. They looked like mouths. "Hey!" I shouted. My voice came back to me from too far away. The mirror's depth had eaten it and returned only shape. The action cam, with its greedy angle, recorded what the main camera missed. As I leaned toward the glass, something leaned toward me from my hallway, not the mirrors. It was me. It was a face that belonged to me and did not. It was close enough that the lens caught pores and breath. It smiled at me with a delight I have never seen on my own face that I did not see it then. The cameras did. You will, if you watch the footage frame by frame. What I saw was the hallway inside the mirror brightening as if a light had been turned on just beyond the corner. What I heard was tapping from behind me. Nails on wood, then knuckles, then the slow pull of a palm up a wall. I didn't turn. I put both hands on the glass and pressed until my wrists ached. "Let me in," I said, and then heard myself, and then corrected. "Let me out." The glass warmed. The warmth felt like gratitude. Something in the hallway behind me, light as a child, heavy as gravity, placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed with a familiarity that stole my knees. It leaned close enough that my ear caught breath. The breath was mine in temperature and cadence. Then a voice in my own pitch whispered, "It's okay." And I wanted to melt at the kindness of it. I do not remember falling. I remember being lowered. I remember the mirror's surface a breath from my mouth. I remember a kiss that felt like the completion of a sentence written 100 years ago. Then the sensation of being poured, not pulled, through something that was not a surface but a decision. On the footage, 4 hours and 52 seconds. In a single frame, the camera records me against the glass. On the next, I am gone. There is no good way to prove the rest. If you have watched the video on my channel, you already know the edit. The 2-camera coverage of the landing, the timestamps at the bottom right, the zooms on my handprint and the fog words, the slow-motion punch-ins, the audio scrubbing that isolates the stair creaks into something like language without convincing anyone it is. The video ends because I cut it this way with the view of the hallway outside the mirror, where someone who looks like me stands up slowly with their back to the camera. They turn toward the lens at the last possible moment, smile with my teeth, and reach forward to stop the recording. It is an elegant cut. I can appreciate it even from here. From this side, the hallway is longer by a measure that changes with the mood of the light. The house is my house, but emptier of noise. The prints on the wall show scenes that have not happened yet, or perhaps did and I missed them. The stair creaks in a different language. The bulbs hum at a pitch I'm still learning to ignore. The mirror, my mirror, the one I thought belonged in my home, faces the hallway like a window into a well-lit version of my life. Sometimes I see the person who wears my face stand in the kitchen and touch the corners of things to claim them. Sometimes they check the camera lenses and smile at their own reflection like they earned it. On the second day of being here, I put my hand to the inside of the mirror and felt the warmth of the outer world through the glass. It made me tearful, the way the smell of someone else's house can break you with a memory of your own. I mouthed, "Let me out," then bit my lip until I tasted iron. I didn't say it again. The spiral carvings at the corners of the frame are turned far enough now that I can't convince myself they are decoration. If wood can learn a verb, these spirals have learned reach. If I stand very still, and the lights are low enough and the angle is just so, I can see the person out there with my face, at my desk, at my sink, at my landing, pausing as if listening to a voice that whispers just under the house rattle that I know how to whisper back. I have practiced. Sometimes, when the lights in their hallway dim and then return, they turn too quickly, as if they heard me say their name. Sometimes they cover the mirror with a blanket for hours, as if I can't breathe under cloth. Sometimes, this is the worst, they come close to the glass and lay their cheek on it and cry my tears with my ducks. I don't blame them. They are me enough to deserve love. On the third night after the switch, while they slept and the house remembered other woods, I leaned to the glass and fogged it with a breath and wrote 3 words with my finger, a blessing I had never thought to give my own face. Take good care. They woke with a start and looked at the mirror like it was a door. It is. They didn't open it. I'm telling you all of this because I still edit footage in my head. I still believe in the truth a camera can harm you into understanding. When you watch the video, if you watch it, please understand that any cut could be lying, and any single frame could be the one honest thing. The honest frame might be the loss. The lie might be me. And if you're watching this footage, how would you know it's really me?